Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, fellow young leaders, and also more senior leaders, it is an honor and a pleasure for me to welcome you here for a very special event that the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy is actually hosting in the framework of our human rights initiatives. In particular, two of those initiatives, the Workplace Initiative, as well as the Born Equal Initiative. The topic for today's discussion is Youth and the European Financial Crisis, from the school bench to the labor market. And I'm really happy that we have a diverse panel here representing a number of different areas of expertise. I'm happy that we can begin the program with actually Dr. Peter Altmix, who's an expert from the Friedrich Naumann Stiftung, which is the foundation of the FDP party here in Germany. He's traveled all the way from Potsdam to be with us today. He'll be beginning today with a brief presentation on actually the topic. Then we will have an interactive panel discussion, including a number of very interesting guests. To my left, Ambassador Karl-Erik Norman is a former Swedish ambassador, former head of the cultural department of the Swedish Foreign Ministry, and currently Secretary General of the European Cultural Parliament, an organization he founded himself. He's also a member of the advisory board of ICD and a member of the faculty of the Center for Cultural Diplomacy Studies, where he's currently teaching a course on nation branding to the MA students. Speaking of MA students, I'm very happy to have three of our MA students here with us as well. We'll start maybe ladies first. To my right with the glasses is Virginia Palm, who's from Sweden initially and currently enrolled in the MA in International Relations and Cultural Diplomacy. To her right, since we're on that side of the room, is Mina Gerges, who's actually Egyptian, also studying together with Virginia. To my left with the hat is Badr Aslam from Morocco, who's also one of the MA students. So I'm happy to have really an international group of perspectives represented from our student body. And then we are joined with four representatives of the ICD. To my right, Daniel Alexander Migdal, who's one of the main organizers of today's event. Jakov Frizis, who actually will take my seat in a moment, who also is one of the main organizers. And then also the moderation today will be primarily my colleague Olivier Milland, who's over there, will join us for a moment, as well as Sarah de Munich, who's also here to my right. So we have really an intergenerational panel, international panel, and an interdisciplinary panel. So I think the makings for a very productive discussion. I will end my concluding remarks here to make as much room possible for the discussion itself. And let's begin. Maybe Daniel, if you could say a few words of introduction for the panel and also of our first speaker.
Okay, so thank you everybody for coming today. So we're focusing on youth unemployment within the European Union, but within that we'll look at many themes. So we'll look at graduate unemployment, the European labour market in general, student immigration, and also within that looking at how integration takes place at the lower levels of education, so primary and secondary, and then we'll also look at things like budget cuts. So before all of that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Peter Altmix, who will give us a short presentation just before the panel discussion. So over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. I just decided to reduce the amount of slides I'm presenting because no one is interested in the discussion about hard sphere and minimum wages and something like that. I just present some basic unemployment data about youth unemployment, about labor market in Europe, and some comparisons. So that should be enough for discussion, I think. So, okay, I already was introduced. I'm working for the Liberal Institute. We are doing publications, and if you're interested in scholarships, we have a huge scholarship program. I put some brochures and information outside, so if any one of you interested in scholarships of our foundation, just take some publications, and if it fits for you, you can apply. Usually we have kind of publications ranging from the big ones, this is in Economic Freedom of the World report, to just some very small ones about religious freedom, or about future task of liberalism. It was one of the last papers of Lord Ralph Dahrendorf, who died 2 years ago. Well, I'm beginning now. First, I give a brief outlook about the European labor market. Second, about the youth labor market. Please keep in mind, youth labor market or youth unemployment ratios or youth unemployment rates are usually a little bit higher than the usual unemployment rates. Then what's happening with the youth labor market in Germany. and effects of active labor market policy, especially to the young unemployed. This I will skip it, I told you, and this also, and some outlook of the labor market in 2030, and it will be as it's supposed to be. First of all, here you find the unemployment rates from 2000 to 2011. As you easily figure out, the average unemployment rate in the 27 European Union countries is in 2011 9.7. It was rising from 2008. It was at minimum at 7.1%, and right now it's 9.7. Thus we have a percentage point plus of 2.6. Yes, and well, and you see it in different countries. There are a lot of difference. For example, in Germany, the unemployment rate is only 5.9, while currently in Spain it's 21.7%, which is really a lot. And Spain had overall in the last years a higher unemployment rate. Some other countries in the southern part of Europe too. Interesting also the development in the United States. Currently they have unemployment rate of 8.9%. They used to have one in 2007 of 4.6, was pretty low. But always keep in mind, this is official data of Eurostat. If you compare it directly with the methodology and the statistics of federal offices of national authorities, it's always a little bit different. You have to keep this in mind. So Eurostat, for example, calculates someone who's working 15 hours a week. If someone working 1 hour a week, according to the classification of International Labour Organization, he's working, and he does not count as unemployed. And due to, for example, the German statistics, if someone working at the maximum 15 hours a week, it's possible to count him as unemployed. So always be careful as if you're comparing these figures. But here, the basic data of Eurostat is usually aggregated, and they usually account for these special differences. Of course, the unemployment rates were rising due to the financial crisis and the economic crisis after the financial crisis. It rose in 12 member states between 2010 and 11. It dropped in 13, and it remained stable in 2 countries, France and Italy. The highest decreases have been in the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania. It also fell down in Belgium, Czech Republic, Germany, Hungary, Malta, Netherlands, and the highest increase in the unemployment rate have been in Greece, Portugal, Spain, Cyprus, and Bulgaria. And you know that these countries are having a huge economic problem. So the next one, unemployment rates by duration. It's also very important. Usually politicians and government are concerned about the long-term unemployment. Long-term unemployment is more than 12 months. So, or otherwise unemployed less than 12 months is usual unemployment, and if it's 12 months or more, it's long-term unemployment. And if you see, for example, Slovakia, it has a high share of long-term unemployment, and long-term unemployment means structural problems on the labor market. It's not seasonal problems, seasonal unemployment, it are structural unemployment on the labor market. Another good example, if I am looking to the panelist participants on my right, is Sweden. Sweden has a very low share of long-term unemployment. It's a very good achievement. And Germany is a kind of in the middle. There have been significant reductions in long-term unemployment from 2005 to 2011. We used to have about 1.2 1.5 million long-term unemployed, and right now we have 1.1 million. So we reduce it to about 500,000, which is a big achievement and is, of course, not only due to the economic policy and about boom and bust cycles, it also is due to labor market policy, especially Hartz IV reforms. Now we come to the youth unemployment rates. It's from January 2000 to June 2012, so it's quite up to date. You can see, for example, the yellow curve is all the European and 27 European countries, and the blue one is 17 countries, the older European countries. It started at about 17%, the youth unemployment rate, and usually there was not a big gap, but from 2001, 2002, 2003, there was a gap between the youth unemployment rates of the 27 of all the countries in Europe and of 17. And it was interesting, in 2008, it was very low, the youth unemployment rate was at the minimum, and then financial crisis, youth unemployment rates grow up, and there was again a slight gap if you look at 2010 and 2011 between the 27 European countries and the 17. Well, again, you have to keep in mind, for example, students. Students are not part of the labor force, and the labor force is a denominator calculating unemployment rate. So usually youth unemployment rates are usually in every time higher than the usual unemployment rates of the adults. And it's calculated aged between 15 and 24. So this was a financial crisis, the green arrow. Youth unemployment rates, in order to find out a more precise picture of what's happening on the labor market for youth, there is a calculation of unemployment ratios. The unemployment ratios calculates the share of the, it's usually the unemployment ratios are lower than the youth unemployment rate. And for example, here for the European 27 countries, there is an average value of 21.4% unemployment rate. And if you calculate the unemployment ratio, it's just 9 or 9.1%. So it's a more precise picture. Again, yep. If you look at Greece or Spain, which are leading in a negative way, both have a youth unemployment rate of 44 or 46 in 2011%. Or if you have a look at Slovakia, also a bad picture. And Lithuania is not so good, and Portugal too. Then we had a look at the unemployment youth adult ratios and the linkage to gross domestic product, economic growth rates in Germany. It was a study conducted by the Institute for the Future of Labor. So if anyone interested, I have the full study with me. And they checked whether active labor market policies could fight youth unemployment or whether they are not successful. First, they found out the unemployment youth adult ratio grew up from 2000 to 2009. And on the bottom, you see the columns of the GDP percent change to the previous year. So you can easily see that the unemployment youth adult ratio is rising due to a downturn in economic activity. And it's interesting, it's long-term unemployment, the youth adult ratio at long-term unemployment remains pretty stable. So usually young unemployed are not so engaged in long-term unemployment. It's a transitory process. Usually young people are looking for jobs, changing from education in the job life, and after a while they usually have no big problems if they have a high education to find a job. Then this study sums up what the effects of active labor market policy, the abbreviation ALMP stands for Active Labor Market Policy on Youth Unemployment. And this study is only of the effects of the German instruments in the active labor market policy on youth unemployment. And it found out overall there is a long-term positive effect for nearly all measures in order to integrate young people in the labor market. They also found out that creation of public sector, of administrative public sector jobs is not so beneficial for a medium-term employment prospect, and it's ineffective in the long run. So if anyone proposes public sector programs for integrating youth unemployment, you should keep in mind the findings of this study. And there's also a criticism about the German active labor market program. It systematically ignores low-educated youth as the needs of labor market groups, which is usually the target of the programs. So if there is criticism that those guys where you usually do the programs are not effectively helped by this program, I guess there's a good idea or a reason for action. The last finding of this study, the employment impact of the participation is, well, it's not surprising. It's often significantly lower for low-educated youth. So we still have problems if people don't have a school exam, if they're leaving school without a grade, something like that. So this is a problem we should solve. So I will skip the next one because this is just for the German discussion, and well, we are leaving out of time, I told you. Though I'm coming to the end, the outlook for the labor market 2030. We will have flexible employment agreements. Usually we have labor agreements between trade unions and labor associations, but the more and more we will have flexible employment agreement in the year 2030. The average working hours will be about 30 hours a week. We see some tendencies overall in majority of countries. It's not only that the official hours per week, which are usually 39 or 40, are reduced, but employees choose to reduce their own work if they can afford it, of course. We will have a loss of importance of employers' associations and trade unions. Well, this is a kind of contradictory because you heard about last year about the fight between a small trade union responsible for the airfield in Frankfurt and thus avoiding the operating of the whole airport because just a very small trade union. So some small trade unions are still very important and have a high impact. So it's been interesting. And you will have an increase in the average age of employees due to demographic developments. We have new forms of labor, part-time work, teamwork, and of course teleworking. And the interesting stuff is the source of this outlook. You know, it's a prediction, it's a forecast. Was a student survey made by universities in Chemnitz and Magdeburg. So in the seminar they asked the students, and the interesting is that the answers of the students fit very good together with the experts and the institutes. So the students in those universities are very intelligent and had a very good idea about the future of the labor market. Thank you.
So, thank you, Mr. Altmix. Maybe we should connect the first question of the audience to the active labor market policy. I know that there was one question on the vocational training from Jeff. And also thank you for a very informative presentation. I don't know, Jeff, would you like to? Use the microphone, yeah. Push the button.
Okay. Does that work? That works. Good. So my question is the following. In the context of the European financial crisis, is it more or less important that young people are grouped according to their individual skill sets, with those who are better suited to vocational style jobs educated distinctly from individuals who are academically gifted?
Would you like to?
Regarding the qualification or the educational level of young people, nearly every empirical data, except for Cyprus and Greece, nearly every country shows that young people with higher qualification are less unemployed. So the average unemployment rate of academics or graduate people is usually about 5.6%, while the other unemployment rates are much more higher. So if you're highly qualified, you have a better chance not to be unemployed and not to be put on the dole. There was interesting data, but it's not collected since 15 years, but it was collected in the 80s and the 90s. It was data about unemployment. It was directly linked to the field of study you studied. For example, psychology or biology or medicine or engineering or something like that. And overall, the average unemployment ratio of graduates is very low. But if you look in detail, you find out that some, for example, in biology or psychology or in social sciences, in Germany have been a lot of people about more than 10 or 11% unemployment rate in graduate. So it was kind of astonishing. But this data is not collected since 12 or 13 years. They stopped collecting the data. It was harmful.
Okay. Do we have any other takers for that question? Or we'd also like to encourage audience participation. So if the panelists say anything that you agree or disagree with, then just raise your hand and let us know and we'll come to you. So the next question, I think, is from Magda. Please, if we could move on.
Hello, I'm Magda. My question will concern graduate unemployment. Nowadays, it's really hard for young graduates to get a job if they don't complete at least one internship, and it's usually unpaid. But students have, like graduates, have no choice, so they just take up the internship. And my question is, what do you think? Is an unpaid internship a chance for young people to get the fulfilling, well-paid job in the future? Or is just used by companies, like the young graduates are used by companies as a free workforce?
Okay, thank you for the question. Does any of the panelists have a response? I think we should give Dr. Altmix a breather in case anybody else just wants a
it's both.
Okay, yeah.
It's both. Yes, experience shows that a lot of companies are using it as a cheap workforce. But the point is, for a young graduate, someone who just left university, college or something like that, there's no alternative. You have to stick to the rules. So if in order to find a job, you sometimes accept an internship. I used to work for Congress as a voluntary intern. it was okay because it only was 4 weeks, and 4 weeks is okay. But I have to finance for myself, and I would refuse to work for a company more than half a year for if they don't pay me. So at the minimum, I think a company should pay me the costs of living and the costs of transport, so in order to nourish myself. But there is a kind of misbehavior in a company world about that.
Okay, thank you. Any other opinions from the panel? I think possibly you have some young people and interns themselves here who might like to offer their own opinion on that.
Don't get too close to the microphone.
Sorry. Should we move on to the next question?
And I think it was also related to the graduate unemployment. And Elena?
Yes, it was my question. I'm an international student in Germany. That's why I wanted to ask a question concerning the recent EU directive on stay and residence of international students in Germany or in the European Union. This directive was implemented into the German law and came into force on August the 1st. And according to this directive, international students are presented with more advantages and more possibilities in Germany. For example, after completing their studies, they now can stay in Germany 18 months instead of previously only 12. And that means that on the one hand, European countries are experiencing difficulties with providing their own citizens with enough working places. On the other hand, the European Union takes a decision to attract more young specialists from outside of Europe. So could you comment on this directive, please, on these innovations, please? Thank you.
Yes. I just want to take this question to share with you my opinion about this, the new directive that Germany take vis-à-vis international students, being myself an international student. Of course, it has like different reasons, but from my perspective and from my small investigation and like interaction with people who are like sort of in like a position of decision making here in Germany, what I found out is that Germany took those measures for different reasons. One of them, of course, because of like the probably because of the deficiency it has in certain fields within the German job market. So there are like certain fields that like Germany really need labor, instead of doing what other countries did, like for example Canada, like has like the program of like selective immigration. So what they do is that like they have like a package for anyone who is like qualified to go and immigrate to Canada and like reach certain level of qualification, then he can apply and then go there. The problem with this, I mean, it's not a problem for Canada, that this is not a problem given into consideration the geographical space Canada has and the need it needs for like population. Germany does not need that. Germany is like a small country that has 82 million people. So it does not really, it's not in need of more people, but it needs of expertise. So instead of like having like immigration package, they decided to bring young people who are going to be trained within the German universities. They are going to be trained according to the skills the German market needs. So, and then once you're trained, so Germany basically is not paying any money for you to be trained. Some students, of course, they get like grants and scholarships, but others, they pay. So you are actually trained in order to like satisfy a required need within the job market in Germany. The trick here is that, of course, like it's a win-win situation. You're getting education, and then you're going to give back Germany like certain aspects. The thing is, once you finish your studies, you are given like 18-month like search. They call it like a job search visa. Here, this is the trick. Here, like that's the measures through which Germany decides whether they need you to stay in Germany or not. Because if you find a job, it means that Germany needs you. If you don't find a job, then you have to go back home. So that's it. I think this is a very wise, way to deal with it without having to have like overcrowd
crowded like country. And I think that's, as I said, this is my own reflection and like interaction with some people. So that's basically the measure they have taken, which differentiate themselves from the US, which has like, you know, a random kind of like immigration, and Canada, which has like selective immigration package, and the UK, which used to bring students and make, well, I think that now I hope that the image is clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Badr. Maybe you would like to fill up on that as well?
Yes, I would be happy to. I think I agree 100% with what Badr was saying, because we have a demographic problem here. When we are speaking about the future of, so here we go. We have a demographic problem when we are speaking about the future of the labor market and unemployment. And today we have about, I would say, two real champions in Europe on employment. And one is, of course, Norway, you could see on the list. They have an extremely low unemployment. It's interesting for me. I belong to an older generation than you, and I remember the times when I was joining the labor market. There were two big differences. First, people came and really asked you to come and job for them. This was the situation in the early 70s. The second was that we in Sweden, for instance, we considered the Norwegians as little brothers. Today it's the opposite. Swedish youth, and including graduated youth your age, they are going to Norway to get a job because the labor market is open and there's a possibility, and we have a language similarity, so it works rather well for Swedish youth to go to Norway. That is one thing. But the bad news, of course, is that the situation is so difficult. I would say even it's disastrous, and that's scandalous. The fact that all these qualified people are not getting a job, not getting it immediately. I think it's a shame for our politicians, for our societies, and so on. The good news is that European demographic development, in terms, if you speak in the perspective of 2030 or 2050, is likely to decrease. The population is going to decrease because we have a fertility of something like 1.7 children per woman in Europe. And that is good news, because this means we can handle exactly that what Badr was saying, and if there are needs somewhere, this can be probably settled with a certain immigration from other areas of the world where the situation is dramatic. Because if we now say it's difficult and scandalous even for you people who are Europeans and who are not getting a job on the labor market, it is disastrous. If you take Northern Africa, if you take the rest of Africa, if you take big parts of India, you are going to have the same in China and so on. In every part of the world where the population is increasing too much, we will have enormous problems. And these problems is not only for the people who are getting no jobs, it's also a problem for the planet, because too much people has disastrous effects on the sustainable development of our natural resources. Well, some comments. I have much more to say, but please.
I don't know if there's any, but since we are on demographics and migrations, maybe we could have a question on the student immigration. I know that Rogelio had one or two questions.
Sure, hi. Well, actually my question will be for the students or the people that are immigrants. And it's basically, besides the quality level of education that that European nations provide to student immigrants, what else drive international students to come to Europe and pursue their academic ambitions? And what's the impact of these students on the European society? And I would like the students to say, like, what else besides the education, and you can give a small comment on that.
Okay, so I think we have four international students on the panel. So yeah,
I just had a question for Dr. Yeah.
Well, the question can be for it's for international students. Besides the education level that European can offer you, what else drives you? Why are you in Europe? Why do you decide to study here?
First of all, because I studied in a British university in Cairo, So in order to be compatible or to be able to, for the same way of thinking of the European ideologies, that that our professors in the universities in Cairo are teaching the European model and how to become take Europe as a model of development as well. And because Europe is a multicultural also country, diversification is very important, and to go from the outlook of the traditionally and ordinary way of thinking, I think Europe provides a very good education comparing to other educations in the Middle East. That's why in Egypt we have like American university, that's another Western education. We have German university, we have French university, we have British, we have even we have Russian now universities as well.
I would like to add to that, being from Sweden, that the labor market is a bit better in Germany, for example, where we are right now. Also, just having the experience of living abroad and studying abroad is, once I go back to Sweden, it's valued, it's very valued. Apart from the academic degree that you get, it shows that you have that you're independent, that you're not afraid to try, and due to the fact that we are living in a globalized world, where you need to be able to meet other nationalities and speak different languages and be able to face different mentalities and way of thinking. And that's also what, at least in my case, what made me come here as an international student. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I can also add is that whether like an international student coming to the European Union, or like a European student going to Africa or like to the US, I think nowadays one of the challenges facing students is like the new kind of like spirit of leadership. And like in order like to face up with the challenges of like globalization and the global market, you really have to have acquired good leadership skills. And those leadership skills, like part of them is not only the fact that you have good degree, but you have also like good like mastery of like foreign languages, multicultural knowledge, cultural sensitive toward like you know different aspects of like the world, because now we're no more like living in a small self-enclosed space. We are like, it's true, like the world is like a small village, and in order like to be working effectively and interactively within that village, you have to have access to it and have an idea about it. So I don't think it's only me or she or he coming to Europe, but also European going to other parts of the world is very now, it's not like now, it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. Americans now, American universities and American students are encouraged by their universities to go outside the US and have like semester abroad. I have studied and I have also taught in the US and Canada, and I studied in Europe and different places and in Morocco as well. And I know now it has become a necessity for anyone facing the challenges of like the global market to have these new leadership skills. In order to have them, you have to like interact at the academic, professional, and extracurricular level at different like geographical aspects, not only within your own country. That one thing. The other part of your question, which is like how do these people, these international students contribute within the host country? Of course, they contribute to like, I don't know, to a big extent. Because don't forget that like, when we talk about Europe, and that's probably, I will conclude with a question to our guest speaker. One of the things that probably we ignored is like the diaspora. How did the diaspora play like its role within like the, either like the advancement or even the crisis of the job market here in Europe? So like they play a role in like enlightening the host country about their own nation, and also they take part of your culture, of your ideology, of everything to their own culture and enlighten their own culture about what's going on outside the other world. And I think that's what the host country benefits from these international students. So they play the role of ambassadors, you know. And here, like, I will conclude with the question to our speaker is that, do you think, because like in one of the slides you showed that like at certain points there was like a correlation, positive correlation between the public and the private after the crisis. After the crisis there were like, there was like both lines, they were up, unemployment among youth in both the public and the private. Could you go to the slides and just to have an idea to what I'm talking about?
Yes, I know what you mean,
yeah.
but...
So, like, don't you think that, like, it's among the crises, like, also, like, the immigrants who are, like, now representing a kind of, like, competition toward, like, the European youth?
It is this one?
Yeah, this one, yeah, exactly. It's starting from after the crisis, you see, like, the line, they're all, like, they're both... They're going in parallel, like as opposed to 2001, where both the European countries and the old European countries,
yeah.
like there was a gap.
Yeah.
So would you attribute that to like to the existence of like the high number of immigrants who are now international students and representing kind of challenge and competition toward like European youth?
Well, the gap is due to the different economic conditions and the different economic systems and the different economic labor market systems. So the gap between the both curves, is well. It's for me. It's not so surprising. It's just a matter of fact that some countries are better off in youth unemployment rates, and some countries. Not so good. I think you are questioning whether this point, this one...
no, after that point, like the lines...
Okay, going up.
Why there is no more gap? Does that mean that like probably now we have like high number of immigrants in Europe who are now competing within the job market against the European youth? That's the question.
No, I wouldn't say that this statistical slide or picture could reflect this. I guess this data is not so detailed in order to give an answer. There might be some further studies which explain whether this is immigration.
It could be one of the factors, not only immigration.
It could be interesting, and I guess it's important. But due to the data Eurostat publishes, you can't answer this question on the basis of solid assessment. So,
yeah, thank you.
I would have an additional question also on these diagrams here, and that is the gender aspect. To what extent is that taken into account? Because we are speaking about both when we are speaking about EU 27 and EU 17, there are quite big differences between the percentage of women on the labor market. The Nordic countries, for instance, have a very high employment rate among women, or at least they want to be employed. Whereas in some European countries, the tradition is, including this country, Germany, as a matter of fact, West Germany, there is a tradition of rather not being looking for a job if you are a woman.